All right, so in September, I abandoned the court case for the following reasons. Reason number one, I was agonizing over the gag order. I knew in general what I told you in previous videos about the gag order, that it was a device that turned the first court case condition. This was a condition of the first court case of Cheon Il Guk, right? Or so it was in my mind. And for some reason, that condition was under assault by this gag order, because the first court argument, had I stepped in court, would have been to get my rights back. I'll talk about that a little later. So this is why I was bothered. I went and got a REMA after talking to a dear friend of mine. And I went and got this REMA. And the REMA was Proverbs 6, 1 through 5. Okay? That was a paragraph that I found. And if you open the Proverbs 1 through 6, it says that I have been ensnared in a trap. You are caught in a trap like some prey animal in the hunter's snare, like a bird in the fowler's net. Okay? You should free yourself like a gazelle. So me and my friend were talking, and I said, is it right to actually just, really drop the case like that? Because I really wanted to, but I didn't understand, the subject and object. Like, what was more important to heaven? Prosecuting the case, even sort of at my own detriment as a person in Cheon Il Guk, or in other words, slaying the Archangel. Now, Lourdes to say sorry in public is the act of slaying the Archangel, okay? Because this is a spiritual matter where spiritually she has to confess that all the tactics and all the motives that she had been animated by and tactics she employed were all condemnable. And so that's why an apology was enough to slay the Archangel or force him back into his position. But anyway, so which was more important to heaven was my agony. And so it was more important to heaven for the citizen to retain his stance on who he is. Okay, that's what I gathered from the REMA, that chasing the Archangel was less important, that we could chase her in a better situation. Okay, I didn't know what that better situation was. I did know that citizens had the right to, Andy Kessler told me, people drop cases and refile them all the time. So I said, okay, maybe we'll refile. And then, so I didn't have an answer for what to do afterwards. I just recognized that this REMA rang seriously true. It broke the stalemate in me about what's subject and object. And I got the Son of God out of that court. But before I did, okay, I had to try to understand what was wrong. Of course, I knew what was wrong from a certain point of view, but I had to go into prayer and reading the Bible, get some further remas, and I stumbled across this story again of the Israelites purging themselves of foreigners, and this made me realize that there was something wrong with the court. So let me begin by saying I had three reasons why I dropped the case. One is I got a REMA, Proverbs 6, 1 through 5. Second is I was already bothered by the idea that I was going to legitimize or breathe life into a court that, at its beginning, disrespected the citizen. It scrutinized the citizen before scrutinizing the public official. It gave aid to the public official and put the citizen in a position to defend his own citizenship and his rights, freedom of speech. So I resented that personally, but in principle, I said, you're going to steal this opening experience of court away from the narrative child of God prosecutes Archangel, which is something Father said we must do. You must prosecute the Satan. Okay, he said this in the 28th of August, 1987, when he was talking to a bunch of blessed children. Okay, so so I had a feeling that the purpose of doing the first court case had been hijacked by the matter of the gag order, and that if I breathe life into this narrative, then the narrative forever for all other people, okay, is going to be, the court gives you your rights, because I treated the court like it had that power. Anyway, I told you guys this before. This third reason, after my prayer and finding that Rima, was that the court had a flaw in it from the very beginning. And the Rima, the Proverbs Rima, told me I was in a trap. So I really tried to understand the nature of this trap. The trap was set in that the first court, which was based on the idea that we were already in Cheon Il Guk, that we're already citizens already, especially I know Lourdes Schwartz and her husband must have gotten citizenship cards, but in order to avoid the spectacle, what she did was, the spectacle of court and being discovered in court for all her tactics and nastiness. What she would have had to do is to define herself as not being a citizen in order to make a case against going to court. Okay, so the third court is something that satisfied her. The voluntary court is something that spiritually satisfied this non-citizen person, right? And so I said, how can the court be compatible for a citizen and a non-citizen? And then this thought, civil relativism, comes to my mind. Like, oh, we're gonna, it's sort of like what was the debate at the time with the Mexicans coming across the border and build a wall, build a wall. It was like they were treating non-citizens as if they had the rights of citizens. And I was like, wow, it doesn't really matter to be a citizen because they're going to give the rights from non-citizens, rights of Americans to non-citizens, you know? And so there's this micro-macro thing, and I'm realizing that the trap is that I agreed to be in such a space where citizens and non-citizens were equal. So, and this is also an improvement for Lourdes because, I don't know, spiritually she's okay with going to the voluntary court, but was not okay with going to the other court. So what is it about this voluntary court that's okay for her, whereas the other one's not okay? I mean, she's going to be exposed, presumably, in either one, right? So she shouldn't really be displaying a preference there. And then I realized that the reason why the gag order could come down is because the spirit of the court had been further defiled by some process. And you could see some semblance of that process in the name voluntary court. So as I explored voluntary court, that's like saying, okay, you can come in Cheon Il Guk and conduct business, or you can come into our country and conduct business. You don't necessarily have to be a citizen, but you can have all the rights of a citizen, okay? And I realized there's this civil relativism. When you think about God's people, what is the purpose? Well, okay, let me clearly state. I got a Rima, Proverbs 6, 1 through 5. I started to feel that I was baited into breathing life into a disrespectful precedent, a precedent that disrespects the citizen. Okay, I wasn't going to go into court under a gag order. And the third one is I discovered that the nature of voluntary court has at its root this type of civil relativism. So I'm going to talk about, number one, the Rima is self-explanatory. So you could just read that and imagine how it made me feel. The second one, I'm going to talk about that. Okay, what is it? Let me break down my second reason. My second reason has to do with the way history is going to unfold, right? So history could either unfold such that the first court case was a story of a man going after the Archangel, being merciful, and only asking the Archangel to admit that he was wrong, okay? Him getting his victory and then continuing to try to have a harmonious relationship with the Archangel, okay? It could have went like that, but the Archangel, knowing that this spiritual condition would forever cause him to release his psychotic idea that he's supposed to rightly control the children of God, he would have had to release in his delusion, which is deviant from the principle. Okay, he created an alternate principle wherein he has justifications to assault and dominate the children of God. Okay, so the Archangel would be setting the condition of releasing himself from that delusion. Okay, he would be breaking his psychological relationship with that alternate principle, that alternate reality, and that alternate delusion. Okay, that's the way the narrative was in my heart as I set out to set the condition. But I cannot set the condition by myself. There are other players. Okay, there is me representing the citizen. There's Lourdes representing the public official in the servant position. And then there's everybody working the machinery of court itself. So once court had been set up to exercise civil relativism, court could actually treat me and her as though we were equal, which in and of itself, court would never find. Court was not designed to find that she was above or below the child or the citizen, because it had already forged civil relativism in it By their very nature, voluntary court. Voluntary court allows citizens and non-citizens to come in equally through volunteerism. Now, I'd like to, you know, I'd like to break down the fact that I didn't want to set the precedent that Jamal went in under these circumstances. Jamal honored the gag order. Jamal honored the idea that court was such a force of reality that he had to deal with its view of gagging him. So he went in to argue that it was wrong or argue to remove it, but he had to accept the reality first in order to go in and argue to remove it. So since I didn't want everybody shackled to this assumption that they should go in court recognizing its power to take away their rights, I said there's no way I'm going to soil all the children of God with this precedent. I'm not going to shackle them. I'm not going to, be the anchor that they have to fight up for a breath of air, as this anchor is tied to everybody's ankles. I don't want to set that precedent. So that's my second reason. So we got Proverbs 6, 1 through 5 is my first reason. Me setting a bad precedent that traps all the other citizens. That's my second reason. And my third reason is that the trap itself was the way the court was set up. Now, what's wrong with civil relativism and breathing life into a court that at its outset equalized the citizen and the non-citizen? If you think about the essence of the citizen of Cheon Il Guk, the citizen of Cheon Il Guk becomes a citizen through heredity, right? The citizen of Cheon Il Guk, the original homeland, father said, is the place where your mother and father's sex organs come together. The reason why you are a citizen and to be a lord over angels, to rule and to even judge the angels, is because you are a true human, which is to say, son of Adam, daughter of Adam, so forth and so on, right? So it comes to you, according to the principle, through heredity, not through accomplishments, right? So the people who are in the citizenry get there through a sexual doorway. They are actually conceived into that population. Now, angels or servants cannot hack their way into being a son, okay? They can be invited in as guests, which is the adopted son's position, and Jesus did that 2,000 years ago. But they cannot be true sons except through a sexual union, and that's what the blessing in 3-day ceremony is. That's what the very birth of blessed children is, including true children. That is their entrance into the nation, the tree of life, and so forth and so on. You cannot relativize those who got in the right way and those who got in the wrong way. And if you read the last book, the last chapter of the book of Revelations. It says, blessed are those that wash their robes, that they may have a right to the tree of life. That means right to Cheon Il Guk, right to the family of Adam, right? To be in his family. Okay, the tree of life. Right to the tree of life, and enter the city by the gates. So the city is Cheon Il Guk, and the tree of life is the family itself. So they go together, and entering the city by the gates means that you don't climb over the walls. You have to come in according to the principle, right? So what the court did by making it a voluntary court was allowed entrance into itself, and it wasn't according to the same barriers or the walls of the city that keep, especially bad archangels on the outside and good children on the inside, right? So what does that defy? What is that a condition of? The condition of civil relativism, what does that actually establish, and who does it help? Okay, so here's a list of things that my wife helped me jot down. Okay, hang on. Okay. So if I'll go to the second one. She one of her notes is a little, sorry, her handwriting. Okay, maturity. Okay, the people who are still subject to the archangel's manipulation are immature people who cannot judge the angel yet. Adam and Eve, when they were immature, did not reach that standard yet. They had to reach the standard. They had to deal with the archangel's ignorance and his playing with them about the commandment, and him not knowing what the commandment is ultimately about, and him wrestling with them. And they had to wrestle with him, and they had to, like Jacob wrestled with the angel, and they had to wrestle with him and come out victorious. So civil relativism equates both sides of that struggle, that the people who hadn't gone through that struggle and the people who beat the archangel, that they're equal. Okay, so that would mean that there is no reason to struggle because there's no difference after the struggle. It would negate the whole idea that Adam and Eve had to deal with the angel at the top of the growth stage. Okay? It says no matter what way they deal with the angel, whether they fail or succeed, it's all equal. Okay, so you still get to, by volunteerism, get to have the rights of citizens, even if you fail with the archangel. And in that way, the archangel, by manipulating the child of God, is able to sneak into some form or version of Cheon Il Guk through dominating the child. Okay, through the wrestling, the child loses. He's ultimately dominated by, okay, the archangel. And the archangel, as the child is accepted into Cheon Il Guk, or into the direct dominion, the angel comes along, piggyback with him, because the angel is actually in control of him. That's the price of losing the wrestling match. Okay, so indirect. Okay, so indirect dominion and direct dominion would be equal. Okay, values of original humans and values of angels would be equal. So God intended that Adam and Eve receive the blessing, and that through receiving the blessing, that is how they would know how much God loves them. But angels have a different set of values. They derive a sense of how much God loves them, respects their work, and appreciates them through the process of doing tasks. That's the very nature of servant. Divine principle is very clear that they're servant and ministering spirits. Right? So by doing tasks and carrying messages, they get pat on the head, good job, and that is how they find emotional equilibrium and a sense of value. So the values of angels and the values of humans would be equal if there's civil relativism. See, there is supposed to be a difference. All the false gods that we ever talk about that were in the Bible are different, variant, false values being touted or championed by ignorant people as if those values are the highest value. The highest value, though, is the value system of the true God. And the value system of the true God is the four-position foundation. It is God, husband, wife, children, wherein they all share the same heart, and they can all fulfill the three-object purpose, which means since they all share the same heart, the children are like Isaac. They're willing to even sacrifice themselves to make their parents happy. They understand the will of the parents, even though the parents are in agony over accomplishing something. The heart of the woman is more like what Tamar was ready to do. She was willing to be the object partner of the lineage of Judah. Even when the males in that family lost their guts and were willing to leave the position of helper of God to prolong the lineage, Tamar, knowing them to be in a state of weakness, even tried to help them and prop them up in their proper way, in their proper position. So these four people would actually share the same heart and could interchange the subject position, and that's called the three-object purpose. So that is the relational dynamic that God finds the greatest amount of joy in, because on one day, one part of that four-position foundation is giving some beautiful form of love to another person in the four-position foundation, even God himself. And, you know, eternally we'd be family like that. We'd be of one heart and one value system. Okay, and later on, Father said that the center of that is first love, which I guess I'll talk about that in another video, and absolute sex. Okay, so angels, it's a completely different, even an alien value system. It's nowhere near the family values, the true family values of the original ideal. This is not to say that human beings can't serve one another like servants, but they do not derive their primary value and emotional quickening. Their emotional bank account is not primarily filled by doing tasks. An angel's emotional bank account is primarily filled through doing tasks, because he is servant. That's his nature. So when we adopted fallen nature and we grew up in a fallen culture, that fallen culture only pays attention to us like an archangel, according to that value system. So many of us have to purge that. And even if you were around true parents, obviously, even Hyungjin and I'm sure would agree that a lot of the people around Hak Jahan were filled with these alternate false gods, and these false gods were more important than the family of true father. And these, more importantly, They could play nicely if they were satisfied by the fact that Father had given them a spouse and had given them the blessing. But they cannot play nicely. They play political games and destroy one another politically. And if they have to destroy one another artistically and spiritually in order to get their political goals, they'll do that, right? So Hyunjin will tell you that about these people, okay? But I wish that he had the capacity to view that the people around him had the same exact problem going on. And, you know, this is ultimate judgment that he could easily forgive them for doing much the same type of backroom maneuvering that the people who were with Hachahan were capable of doing. I mean, maybe now he realizes how hard it was for Hachahan to neutralize them, because he doesn't seem to have the ability to have neutralized them either. In other words, fate had him walk a mile in her moccasins with these group of people that surround him. Okay? But those people with those values are trying to, by creating a voluntary court, by telling Hyunjin they won't go to court under any other circumstances. Hyunjin should have never created a voluntary court, because it was a very subtle problem. I mean, I didn't see it. I really required desperate reamers from God before I saw that voluntary court means civil relativism. So that is what it is. I'm reporting that to you. And yeah, humans and angels would be equal. That means humans would not rule over angels. Oh yeah. So if this is the biggest thing that the angelic world has to gain by setting up civil relativism, it would mean that human beings couldn't rule over the angels because they would be equal. Okay? That means children of God, inhabitants of the tree of life, branch members of the tree of life, would be equal to people who are not members of the tree of life. And the principle has it that we could judge. That means evaluate, sort out. That means we could temper the schemes of the angel. That means we could see, pick out where they've crossed the line. Where they've crossed the line. We could meter out justice in various ways. The main way is to give them energy or withdraw energy. Okay? Since we are the channel of love, they'd have to care about that. The only reason why they have hope is because people in our position are not going the path of God's liberated authority. We are not going the way of elder son. We are staying in restoration age where we think we have to furnish proof for the angel, and we are not taking. Father did it all, but we are not taking onto ourselves who we are in Father's view of who he made us to be towards the end of his life. He made us victorious, not by anything. It's just by birth. It's the passive condition of being born of him is why we. So a lot of people are stuck in the meritocratic archangelic thinking. So according to that, you cannot see what you did or what you accomplished that puts you on a higher level. The angels think like that. But a kid who just simply respects his father knows that he's an inheritor because of what his father did, because of what his mother did. It comes through heredity. Okay, so that's why civil relativism is wrong. Civil relativism is wrong because it allows the angels to think that they've invaded the direct dominion. It allows them to piggyback. It's almost like a Trojan horse. It allows them to be like a weapon inside this still subdued child of God as the child of God approaches the throne of God. Okay? That boundary is still intact. I dropped that case. And I'm just telling you guys, this is why I dropped that case. Because I'm not a civil relativist. Archangels are not equal to children of God. The privilege of being born of Adam is a wonderful thing. It is enough. The privilege of marrying God's daughter is enough. I don't want anything positionistic or anything that according to Archangel values is wonderful and splendid. Okay? Because no, it's not. It's not the most splendid thing. Being a blessed husband is. Being a son of true parents is the most splendid thing. Okay? So I'm not making a trade. So even for the right to be the first citizen and go down in history as the first citizen of the first court case, nope. Saw right through that too. That's not valuable enough for me either. If I had to go down in history as a total nobody, and it says the meek will inherit the earth. So, I mean, I really don't mind being my wife's husband. And that's why I could walk away from that temptation and that trap. And all the glory really is to True Father, who, because of what he said in 1999, I've been clinging to that for nearly 20 years now, the blessed family is the most valuable thing that God, true parents, and Jesus get to behold, past, present, or future. There's nothing more valuable. And I already have that. So I don't have an excessive desire or lust for anything that the archangels or the court was peddling. Okay? And I say no to civil relativism by dropping that court as well. Okay? All right, that was my reason. Bye.